So I know I just made a build guide on Traveler and everything I said was true and relevant, but after playing around with Elemental Mastery, I wanted to make this quick video to show you when and where you want to build Elemental Mastery on Traveler as opposed to energy recharge, crit rate, or electro damage. Before we get into it, I want to tell you why this is super relevant. Because I've been doing a lot of research into Yoimiya, one thing I wanted to test is whether or not Electro MC is able to proc Overload with Yoimiya as a way of doing extra damage or being an off-field damage unit. I leveled up an alt account to be able to do this on the Yoimiya quest, and as it turns out, you can use Electro Traveler as an off-field DPS unit for Yoimiya. But it gets better than that because it's not just Yoimiya that this works for. You can use it for other units that also apply a ton of pyro, like Yanfei, like Klee. I can't speak to the consistency for all of them, but I know that with Yoimiya, because she applies so much pyro, the electric strikes that were coming down and hitting enemies were proccing Overload from Electro Traveler every time. And in cases where the pyro damage is going to reach the enemy really quickly, this will apply to all of those characters. But that's not all it's relevant for. Something that was found recently is that using Xingqiu with Yoimiya might not actually be the best DPS output when there are other supports available, considering the fact that you can only vaporize hits 1 and 3 of Yoimiya's combo. So in cases with a lot of pyro DPS, Xingqiu is actually going to be very good and better than Electro Traveler reacting with Overload. However, in more niche cases like this, where you don't actually have the ability to consistently vaporize, we may see Elemental Mastery Traveler actually put out a ton of damage. And the other thing that makes this so good is that Electro Traveler is a free-to-play unit. Now take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, because I don't know if for sure Electro MC is going to be better than Xingqiu in Yoimiya's case, but I think it's incredibly important that we do know that Electro MC can be built with Elemental Mastery and can be used to support pyro units. Because the big thing to remember is that Electro MC, even if you are building electro damage and crit, you still aren't going to be reaching damage numbers of characters like Fischl and Beidou. However, if you do build Elemental Mastery, you can see bigger numbers than we were outputting before. For example, the clip at the start of the video showed me doing 10k overloads. Now that's not even that much. You can find a video right now of somebody doing 17k overloads, and I believe you could push that to something like 20k or even beyond if you fully invest in Traveler. So essentially, if you're running a pyro carry, you can use Electro MC to overload, and that is going to do a lot more damage if you fully invest in Elemental Mastery and in Electro Traveler. And now I'll show you how to build them real quick, just in case there's any confusion. I don't advise that you follow specifically what I'm doing here because I don't actually have a good artifact set for this. I just wanted to see how viable the damage would be, and it is definitely viable. So if you are going to build Elemental Mastery Traveler, I advise that you build 4-piece Thundering Fury. And I know that I said in my last video that 4-piece Thundering Fury isn't as good, and in any case other than using a pyro carry and trying to overload, that is correct. But again, this is one particular niche, one specific instance where you may want to build them differently. Plus this build, if you go all out on damage, you may actually end up missing out on some energy recharge, which will make it harder for your Electro Traveler to get energy back. You can still use the set that I mentioned in my other video, which is the Emblem of Severed Fate set, and that'll be fine too. It's just that Thundering Fury 4-piece will get you a little bit more damage. Remember, Thundering Fury 4-piece does not give you the cooldown reduction when you're off the field. So if you're going to build Elemental Mastery Traveler, you should be using 4-piece Thundering Fury, and on your artifacts, on your sands, you want to make sure you still have energy recharge because Traveler needs that energy recharge so unbelievably bad. The thing is, an 80 cost burst is going to suck, and typically if you're using Electro Traveler, one of the best things about their kit is that they can battery other characters while they're not on the field, so you want to use their battery for other characters rather than themselves a lot of the time. So energy recharge sands, and then you're going to want to use an Elemental Mastery Goblet and Elemental Mastery Circlet. For substats on these, you want to prioritize energy recharge and Elemental Mastery where applicable across all artifacts. In fact, you don't even really have to worry about crit at all if you do decide to go with the Elemental Mastery build, because Overload can't crit. You can, and I'd say this with reluctance, but you can build Elemental Mastery on the sands. The thing is, again, it's just so hard to recharge Electro Traveler. We may see that change if the Electro Archon ends up being a massive battery, but my assumption is that even with Fischl or even with another battery going into Traveler, it is going to be hard to get your burst back. 180 energy recharge feels really low for Traveler. You can go with something like that and that will be okay, but it's going to be a lot lower than someone like Xingqiu, which is another reason that this is a niche situation. Same deal applies to weapons. If you have Freedom Sworn, this could actually work out really well for Traveler just in terms of how much Elemental Mastery you're going to be able to get as a main stat. But even in an Elemental Mastery build, Sacrificial Sword is just too good to give up, especially if you're able to grab all the amulets on just Traveler to try to get their burst back. But anyways, the TLDR of this is that I tested Yoimiya, and it turns out that Electro MC with Elemental Mastery is going to be very strong, and it turns out that Electro MC with Elemental Mastery is just strong in general with pyro carries. Electro MC isn't going to be good in Superconduct teams because Superconduct is just a weak reaction, and that's the unfortunate truth of it. And though the characters that can do Electro charts are pretty strong, you still want to build your Traveler like a damage unit with energy recharge if you are doing something like that, just because Elemental Mastery isn't going to get you the damage that you want to see in Electro charge. If you are for some reason looking for an Elemental Mastery sword though, you can check out Chen the Sharp in Liyue. If you talk to him with the right dialogue options, he gives you this item called the Dark Iron Sword. There's only one of them in the game. It builds on Elemental Mastery. That's the one I had just for the showcase so I could match an endgame Elemental Mastery build because, let's be real, my artifacts aren't leveled at all. Otherwise, you can build Iron Sting, but I know that none of you guys have any prototypes left. Again, one last note, I would recommend having a battery with Traveler, no matter what you do. Honestly, having like that mega or second battery is really helpful for Traveler. So whether or not you build complete energy recharge or if you build Elemental Mastery, you should try to run Fischl or Beta with them if you can. But yeah, guys, I just wanted to make that quick PSA that Elemental Mastery Electro Traveler is actually pretty strong in Pyro Carry compositions. So if you don't have Xingqiu or you're looking for something to do a little bit of extra damage with your carry, Electro MC might be it if you build Elemental Mastery. For now, I'm going to be sticking with Electro damage and crit, but you guys are free to do what you want. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, make sure to like and subscribe if you like this video. We go live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Braxophone, and let me know what you think of Elemental Mastery Electro Traveler.